Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new The Hacker Factory podcast with hacker maker Phillip Wylie. You're about to discover what the role of a professional hacker entails, the different specializations it holds, and what it takes to learn and become one. Enjoy the conversation as Phillip and guests unveil the secrets of professional hacking, a mysterious, intriguing, and often misunderstood occupation. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
BugCrowd's award-winning platform combines actionable contextual intelligence with the skill and experience of the world's most elite hackers to help leading organizations identify and fix vulnerabilities, protect customers, and make the digitally connected world a safer place. Learn more at bugcrowd.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Hacker Factory. I'm your host, Phillip Wylie, the Hacker Maker, and each episode I have a guest that shares their story of how they got started in offensive cybersecurity, bug bounty, security research, or other areas of cybersecurity. And this episode, I'm happy to welcome Derek Scheller. I know Derek from InfoSec Twitter and his stream, so it's an honor to have you on today, Derek.
Yeah, definitely, man. I'm happy to be here. I mean, me and you have talked a lot. I've been following a lot of what you do over the past few years, and so being here is just amazing. It's crazy how small of a community we are that some of these big names just are starting to pop up more and more of, hey, let's collaborate, let's do things, when I still feel like I'm fighting to get, even seen. And so it's interesting, and it's been a wild year. Well, year and a half probably now.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, sometimes it just takes a while. Some people are out there for a while and you don't hear. Just like I was talking to, trying to think, it was during our podcast, but talking to Heath, and he was kind of mentioning, John Hammond had been out there for years creating content, and then it's just the last couple of years that he really blew up, and people are starting to see him more and stuff. So it's just seems like sometimes just kind of a timing thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, when you're creating content, it comes down, and I've talked to Alyssa Miller about it, myself and Eric Bellardo with the two shows we do, and it's been very much trying to – it's one thing if you do a lot of conference talks. So, like, if you go to B-Sides or DEF CONs or things like that, then it becomes – it's a lot easier to get your name out there, right, because you're in front of people live and in person, or even on virtual, conferences right now. But I've never been a fan of like CFPs. It's just, I don't know. I'm the type of person, I like to talk, but I don't ever necessarily have a topic of conversation that I think will run on for a half hour, an hour, unless I'm talking to somebody else. So I always feel uncomfortable doing CFPs, and I think a lot of other people do too. So that was why I started my show. But then at the same time, if you're not in front of people, then people don't know who you are, then people don't see you, so they don't follow you or whatever. So when you're relying on doing things organically, I think it's a little bit harder. Not to say it's not hard doing CFPs and talking in front of people and things of that nature. Just I think it diminishes your audience a little bit, just because now you're limited to only certain things instead of exploring all avenues.
Yeah, it's interesting how it works, because conference talks is kind of how I got started, but it's interesting too that, comparing followers and stuff, I'm not doing any better than you are. And I've only been doing my stream for, stream and podcast, the podcast since March, and streaming somewhere around the same time. But as far as the stream goes, just not that many followers on the streamer, but I guess there's a lot of people that go back and watch the videos later on too.
Yeah, and that tends to be how it goes. I mean, even if you consider, at most, I think I've had 20, maybe 25 while I'm, doing my live streams and things like that. But then after the fact is when you'll see, I think the highest one I have right now is like 100 and some views, maybe 200. But I mean, that doesn't take away from what I'm doing. And the way I see it is any person reach is a person reach, even if it's the same people every week. And I find it comical because at one point, because Shannon Morris has been on the show, and me and her, we talk a lot, and I try to get a lot of advice from her on what I can do better and do different and things of that nature, especially with her audience. Granted, she does things a little differently, doing technical videos, and doesn't do a whole lot live. So hers is more well produced and thought out, and things of that nature. And so I was amazed, when you see someone like that, and in InfoSec and privacy, she's really big because she's been doing it for so long. And so I called her out one episode, and I was just like, yeah, I don't even know if Shannon watches my show, but, she's amazing people and this, that, the third. And she actually left a comment, and she was like, actually, yeah, I do watch your show. And I was like, oh, woohoo. I mean, it was after the fact, because depending on the hours that it airs and what people have going on at that time of day and things like that. But I just thought it was funny, something like that. It's always nice to know that. And again, it comes back to, I've said it before. I said it actually this past Friday on my podcast. My why is to help others. And so whether I'm losing money or making money, as long as I'm helping someone, that's all that matters to me. And so it's a lot of how I do things, man. As long as people continue to say, hey, this helps, this is worthwhile, this is useful, I'll continue to do it. The moment I stop finding out that it's useful to anybody, if I'm still not making any money from it, then yeah, I'll probably stop. But while people still find it either entertaining or, useful information, then it'll continue to be worth doing for me.
Yeah, and I honestly think that if your intent is to help others, then I think that you will succeed, because that's just kind of the things I do are based on helping people. I know there's a lot of other people that stream and content creators that are making money, and I don't make zip, but it seems like, you just kind of helping people and seeing them succeed, that's kind of a good reward in itself. Because, we can only succeed so much ourselves, but then sometimes when you help others succeed, sometimes it's even a better feeling to see, how they were able to accomplish this from your advice. So you're able to multiply what you're doing on your own through other people.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's the big thing I love about cybersecurity is, yeah, you have those outliers, right? And more I'm involved in the community, especially over the past few years. Somehow I avoid all the drama. I don't know how, but somehow I do. Mainly it's because I keep my mouth shut and just stay out of it. But seeing people that have either been on my show or watched my show say, hey, yeah, I did this and it worked out great, or I did this and it worked out great, or see them come on the show and now all of a sudden they've got, over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 followers, started their own channel, and they're, doing great things. Anytime I see that makes me happy, because like you said, to me, it's always been about helping other people, because that's how we'll succeed. Or at least that's where I find my success. I have a full-time job. I don't need to do what I'm doing. I'm doing it because I love helping others. And so, it's one of those things where that is my reward. My reward is not financial gain. My reward is seeing the success of others. And me and David Fraley have talked about this before, makeshift. If you're, the only true success is if you're bringing others up with you. If you're holding people down, are you really succeeding, or are you just stepping on people to kind of make your way in the world? And I never want anybody to think I'm stepping on somebody else. I always want them to realize that I would not be where I'm at or doing what I'm doing without the help of others. And so why am I not going to help somebody else? Because I know I didn't get here on my own. There was someone that gave me advice or guided me or taught me or something in some way, shape, or form, or supported me, whether it be my family, friends, or whatever, that even in my cybersecurity career, I wouldn't be where I am without the help and guidance of either fellow soldiers or instructors or whatever the case may be. And me and Davin Jackson talking about a lot. Keytron Evans was a huge, huge mentor of ours, and still is to this day. I still reach out to him and talk to him on, different aspects of security. And me and him have had disagreements where it's like, hey, I don't think this, especially when it comes to certifications, we have a little bit of a disagreement. But we talked about it, and he explained his side, I explained my side, and it was one of those things where it's like, I understand your point. I may or may not agree, but I get where you're coming from, and it makes sense. I don't think it should be that way, but it makes sense considering the way things are. And so being able to have that discourse and have that discussion without anybody getting mad or angry is something that is very much needed, and especially in our field, because, everybody writes an exploit differently or likes the language differently or doesn't need to learn a language or has to learn a language. And so being able to take the advice of others or the criticism and not take it to heart, but take it as a learning opportunity of, okay, well, maybe they see it this way because of A or because of B. That's something that's been huge for me is being able to take criticism and kind of look at it and be like, do I agree? Do I not agree? And if I agree with it, how do I adapt it and put it into the flow of what I do and how I accomplish things in my life and in my career? And if I don't agree with it, then I just don't agree. I don't have to be mad at you. It's your opinion. But at the same time, that's how you feel people need to succeed in this career. So, okay. I don't expect everybody to listen to me. I have my own way of coming up and doing things. It may not be the same for everybody else, and I would hope not. Everybody has their own journey. But at the very least, take my journey and the other journeys that I share along the way with the people that have been on my show and, been on your show, and kind of look at it and put your own frame of mind around it and see if maybe something they did or I did will work for you. And that's really what I hope in cybersecurity we could really start doing, is looking at everybody's story and everybody's journey and everybody's learning and say, well, I can't learn that way. I never did that. So let's try to do this. And then we're going to learn this topic a different way and see if it sticks, see if it works for me. And it's really, honestly, the best thing about it is there's so many different opportunities and people out there that you can learn from, that it's amazing. It truly is.
Yeah, it's amazing and good that we have all the resources that we do, because back when I was getting started in pen testing back in 2012, you didn't have all the content creators. You had, I was following Mubix and Got Milk's blog and that sort of thing, but there wasn't as much out there as there is now. So that's good that people have a little more guidance and opinion. As you mentioned, some people explain it a certain way and people pick up on the way people explain it. So it's good to have all these different views, because, we always talk about, diversity in workplace. So also your diversity of resources you're learning from as well too is helpful. So it's,
yeah, for sure. And if you look at it again, like you, I think it was the early 2000s, back when wireless first came out, is when I started getting into offensive security and learning things like Backtrack Linux and all that other stuff and breaking into wireless networks. And I think I was reading blogs. I can't even tell you who my resources were, because at the time I wasn't involved in the community. I was just learning. And so I wasn't on any social media for that purpose. I was on, I'd Google search a blog or an article or, Stack Overflow or GitHub or something just to find the information I needed. I think offensive security was probably the vast majority of my resources on how to use certain tools. But Mubix was a big one that I ended up coming across when I started doing more like pen testing and pen test reports and things of that nature, because he had designed a vulnerability database that plugged straight into Serpico, which I forget who that was designed by, but you were able to import the results from here. And it sucked because it was a great idea, and I promoted it for a while back in, I think, 2017. But I didn't have the followers. I didn't have the community that I have now. So it never really went anywhere by my word. And I didn't see him promoting it as much as, hey, this is what I have, that it would be great for you guys to do this. But it was an awesome idea of, instead of having these paid for tools or paid for resources to like get your vulnerabilities and do all this importing, like literally as you would find a vulnerability, you could put it in, put what the exploit was, put in what you would take to remediate it, kind of like a vulnerability scanner, but instead this all embedded into an open source pen test report builder. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I don't have to pay for anything. It's free. But as far as the community went, they never really, at the time, and I haven't looked at it in a while now, it never went anywhere. So I kind of feel bad, because it was like, I'm on Slack with, God, I can't remember his name now. Hold on. Now I got to find it. Lee Baird for the Discover scripts. And actually, I got to get in, and I keep saying I'm going to help fix some scripts up for him. But, I talk to Lee Baird almost several times a month, just checking in on the Discover scripts and if he needs any help with anything. Because I think it's a great tool. And the fact that he's keeping up with it, and Jay Townsend and the tools, that that these people make is just amazing. And so I really enjoy what they're doing. And so I love giving back to them and being like, even if I don't fix it, being like, hey, I found this, you guys might want to take a look. I don't have to worry about GitHub and doing a PR or an instant or whatever. I just go in and say, hey, here you go. This is the issue. But I love the community when they are that open, when they're willing to talk to you and explain things. Tiberius is another one. When Tiberius was working on auto recon, I think it is, I was going through OSCP, and actually I think it was before I even started OSCP, and me and him were talking, and I was, we were discussing ways he's going to develop it for the future, the different versions he was working on. So having those conversations and learning their thought process on why they do things the way they do and the different languages they use and stuff like that, to me, it's just amazing. It's one of those things where you learn so much. I mean, I think I learned more about reverse engineering from a 17-year-old than I did trying to learn it on my own or reading articles. Like when he explained certain things to me, I was like, holy crap. And I was like, how old are you? He was like 17. I was like, God, I wish I knew this when I was your age. Like, I wish I was around this stuff. I was around computers. I was fixing computers. But when I was in my teens and stuff like that, there wasn't anything that I was doing. I wasn't really into programming. I was just fixing computers. I was just, doing that type of stuff. I knew operating systems. I knew a little bit of networking. And then I knew how, when hardware went bad, how to fix it. Like I said, it wasn't until probably the early 2000s that I really started getting into the security side of things.
Yeah, very cool. That kind of worked out well because I was getting ready to kind of ask you how you got started to share with our listeners.
Yeah, it was weird. Growing up, just like anybody else that was born in the 80s, you grow up with AOL and Prodigy and Netscape Navigator and all that other fun jazz. And, the biggest fear was somebody picking up the phone initially and killing your internet connection, especially if you were in the middle of downloading something. But shortly thereafter came around some of the first malware that I had ever seen. And we called them punters because it was basically a denial of service on your end where they would send you an instant message and it would kill your connection. And so that kind of intrigued me initially, but I never researched it. I was intrigued, but I was still real big into sports and things like that. So I didn't do any research. And then around 2004, 2005 is when Wi-Fi really started coming to the forefront and being in more and more homes. And in 2000, I don't even know what year it was, but WEP was still out. WPA had started to come out. It was in its first edition, but WEP was still real big. And so I was sitting around my apartment and I was like, there's got to be a way to crack a Wi-Fi network. Like there just has to be a way. And so I ended up breaking into my wireless network and I was like, holy crap, I could do it. And then from there, I just started looking more into Metasploit and just the different tools that pen testers use and offensive security professionals. And that was the weird thing is some people do it to make money or to do something illegal or just because they're curious. I did it because I was curious and I tested everything on my own computer. Like I would literally, at the time, I didn't even do a lot with virtual machines and building labs. I legitimately would run malware on my personal computer. I had crashed several computers that way and had to reformat them just because I still had not done enough learning to know about building my own lab or running a ton of virtual machines. So I remember when MySpace was out, I was always curious about what certain malware did. And, when MySpace was around, you'd have those pages. Oh, you have to download this in order to view this MySpace page. And I remember looking at it and I was like, man, this is a virus. I wonder what it does. Download. And this is when Vista first came out and UAC was around. And I was like, download, run. And the UAC popped up. And I was like, I probably should say no, but we're going to say yes. Yeah, go ahead, run. Whoo-wee. And pop-up after pop-up just bombed my screen. And it was hilarious. And so, you do the whole Alt-Tab and, Windows R to pull up your MS config and everything else to get to your task manager, kill the virus, and then stop it from running on boot. That way you can actually reboot your computer and, kill it from the system. But I mean, I had no problem doing that. It was my personal computer. I mean, I didn't have anything important on there, so I really didn't care. I was still young. It's not like I had a license or driver's or social security numbers or credit cards or anything on there, because I didn't even have a credit card yet. So it wasn't something I was worried about. And I had such a fun time with it. But yeah, my first experience actually getting into the field was definitely when wireless networks came about, breaking into my own Wi-Fi. I joined the Air National Guard and was given the opportunity to do a lot of testing on the Wi-Fi out at my guard base, and testing the security of their wireless system and what they used. But it was never a career field for me. I wanted it to be, but the Air Force didn't have one yet. And then when they came out with it, I was only in the Guard, and in that time frame, I'd only ever worked like desktop support or fire dog at Circuit City or help desk. So all the learning I was doing was all on my own and playing on my own system. So then I went to the Army with every intent of getting into security and didn't get it right away. Ended up being a broadcast engineer and working IT networking and broadcasting and stuff. And so did that, and then finally got cybersecurity in the Army. But the whole time I'm still studying on my own. I'm going home every day and playing on Linux. And, at this point I am learning more about lab environments and setting things up. So I have all this stuff set up on my personal computers. And then in 2015, I want to say it was, I finally got the cybersecurity MOS. I went through the schoolhouse, got all my SAN certs and all that other fun stuff. Got my CEH in, I think, 14, either 14 or early 15. Ended up with my CCNA and CCNA security at the same time. Graduate there, started the MOS, was there for a little while, and then got out and started working in 2017 is when I had my first civilian job in cybersecurity. And it was about October 2017. And so I did that for about 6 months. I was a consultant for a company. And it was that's what we called it. But essentially I was part of the security team for a company here in the Pittsburgh area, and, help their patch management and vulnerability management and things like that. I was there about 6 months, got horrendous pay. So decided that I was leaving anyways. So at around 6 months, I had an interview for an MSSP, and I'm getting a huge raise to go and be a blue teamer and work engineering for Sims. And that was great. Did that for about a year and a half. And then at about a year and a half, one of my buddies calls me up and he was like, "Hey, I got a pen test job. Do you want it?" I said, "Yeah." Took a pen test job, worked that for a little while. And now I'm mainly blue team, but I do pen tests on occasion when they come up for work and things of that nature. And I continue to help and learn and study, just so should it ever arise where I need to do a full-blown pen test or red team engagement again, I can still do it. I don't ever want to feel like I can't do it, which is why I like mentoring others, because then it's still fresh in my mind how these tools work and how things go. And that's another reason why I do some of the videos on my YouTube channel, is so that I can, okay, this is how Metasploit works. And sometimes I have to refresh because it's been a few months. I'm like, oh crap, how do I, get to the workspaces or do this at a third? I'll either watch one of my videos or I'll Google it and find the book on Metasploit, or I'll go to any of my numerous books on Metasploit and, Linux and things of that nature. Linux for Hackers is an amazing book. And so, it's been a long journey, because a lot of it was teaching myself it. My degree even is only in computer information systems and networking. It wasn't even in security, because those degrees didn't exist whenever I went to school. And when I started my master's degree, I ended up not finishing it because it was all paperwork. It was all reports. It was like, oh, write a 10-page report on cybersecurity, write a 10-page report on forensics or whatever. And I'm just like, when am I going to get my hands on equipment? Oh, you're not. Cool. All right. So this is worthless. All right. Good to know. Charlie Mike, go about my way. So I never finished my master's. I always intended to, but then realized it's way too much money, and I don't feel like paying for a master's degree when I don't need one.
So what advice, since you do a lot of mentoring and giving advice and stuff, what would you advise for someone that wanted to get started in pen testing?
One, don't ever be afraid to fail. Failure happens, mistakes happen. keep to your own lab environment initially, whether that's using Hack the Box or Try Hack Me or something like that, or building your own. Building your own is a great way to do it, because then you learn how everything works together and talks. And I think that's one of the big fundamentals that we're missing today in people trying to get into cybersecurity, is they don't know the fundamentals. So they immediately try to jump into like pen testing or, become an analyst or whatever, but they haven't done the underlying research yet. And I'm not saying get certified. You don't need a Network Plus or an A Plus or anything like that. Hell, you don't even necessarily have to work a job in the technical field. But it is very difficult to get a job in cybersecurity, and regardless, whether it's pen testing, an analyst, an engineer, a consultant, IAM, whatever, if you don't understand the underlying concepts of how networks communicate, if you don't understand, how a router talks to another router or a switch, or how this operating system can communicate to this operating system, or even how they work internally. And I only say that because there's a lot of vulnerabilities and exploits in identity management and things like that, especially with the cloud now, where if you don't know how all these pieces work together, it makes it very difficult for you to do your job. Because as a blue teamer, you have to be able to correlate data, and you can't correlate that data if you don't know where that data is coming from or what logs are going to show up. As a red teamer or as a pen tester, you have to know how to bypass certain systems, or what a firewall is and how to how it works. So your next gen firewalls are completely different, right? They're working at layers, 3 through 7. Like, they actually work at the application layer now. So if you don't understand how these things talk and work and communicate, then it'll make your job a hell of a lot harder. It'll make it a lot harder to get into the field, because then when you're asked questions about it, you won't have the answer. You may know how to find the answer, but the fact that you didn't even know the answer to some of the most basic questions, like what is port 443 used for, then it becomes a lot more difficult. It's already hard when you don't have experience. Don't add a lack of knowledge on top of that. So you should have one of the two, either experience in IT, whether that's network administration or system administration, or knowledge that you can produce, whether that's a blog post, YouTube, GitHub, something that'll show you have the information, the ability to learn what it's going to take to do that job. So you can't have none of that and expect to land a job. You have to have some way to show your work. And that just makes it easier on everybody, because these days, what's the first thing most people do when they go to hire someone? As soon as they get a resume, they're looking for a LinkedIn profile or a Facebook page or Twitter or something to see what information you're putting out and who you are. Because it lends a lot to, like I said, what is your capability to learn? Are you able to be taught? And if I don't see any willingness to learn, then why am I going to bring you on, say, where I work as a consultant? If you don't have a willingness to learn, that's a lot of what consulting is. You're learning on the fly, because different clients are going to have different technologies and do different things, especially in pen testing. There's different firewalls and different EDRs and different SIMs and different, logging mechanisms and things like that. So if you can't learn what each of these things do, it's going to make your job really, really difficult. So I have to know that you have an ability to learn. So I always say, show that ability. Write a blog or do a YouTube channel or a GitHub repo, something for the position you're going for.
So what is your opinion on certifications and degrees? Do you think that's a requirement for people trying to get into the industry?
I don't think it should be a requirement. I think it is. I think some companies make it a requirement, but I don't think it should be. Again, it comes down to, you can have all the certifications in the world, but if you've never put it into practice and you've never done any hands-on learning, then those certifications don't really mean much now, do they? Same with a degree. If you've never had your hands on the equipment and actually done the job, it doesn't really mean much. Now you show me a blog post or YouTube channel or something that shows that you've actually been doing the job, I think that holds more weight. So I don't necessarily care about certifications, but if you have a certification or a degree, you better be able to speak on those topics. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, is they do so much to study for a certification or for a degree, but then when it's done, it all gets pushed to the back of their mind. And so they can't recall it or they can't talk about it. And I think that's the biggest thing, is if you're going to have a Security Plus, you better be able to tell me, at least some of these ports that I have on my back wall. Like, you should tell me, I should be able to say, hey, what port does HTTP generally work on? You should be able to say port 80. What is DNS, what port does DNS generally work on? Because yes, you can change all these ports. They don't have to work over those ports, but you should know what the common ports are, or at least some of them. And if you can't speak to that, especially from a security standpoint, then your degree and your certs mean nothing to me. And I think that's the biggest thing, is don't get a certification if you're not going to do anything with it. Or if you are hoping to do something with it, and it's taking you a while to get a job, you should be keeping up those skills and that knowledge so that when the time comes for you to interview and get that job, that certification means something. Don't get a certification just to be a certification and get your foot in the door somewhere and then you can't speak to it. You should be able to speak on whatever certifications you have. And I'll be the first one to admit, my reverse engineering malware certification that I got last year, the year before, I mean, I could do it if I sat down and worked at it again, but I'd at least have the books to know, okay, I need to go here. I know what malware I'm dealing with. I know what it's doing, but I would struggle through assembly for a little while. But I have the ability to go back, pick up a book and be like, all right, it was this chapter, this page. All right, this is what I need to do. So I think there's a difference in the way people learn, because some people can recall things easily. I can't. If you ask me a question, I may not know right then, but it's not going to take me a week to relearn it. It's going to take me a few minutes to pick up the book, figure out where it was at, and then recall it from memory. Like, oh yeah, this is how you do all this stuff. And it usually just takes one or two key words. Some people, it would take days, if not weeks, to relearn something that they should know via certification.
Yeah, we're getting down towards the end of the show. Is there anything you'd like to share that we haven't discussed?
Honestly, just keep your head up, man. That's the biggest thing. So many people get worried and they get disheartened when they get turned down for jobs, or they don't get the interview, or they don't hear back. So don't let it get to you. Keep your head up. If this is a field that you really want to get into, you're going to get in. It's just going to be working with somebody, meeting the right person. Networking is huge in this industry. Get on LinkedIn, make a good profile on LinkedIn, and actually talk to the people on there, engage with them. Because a lot of times, by engaging with others, especially your CISOs, your security managers, your security engineers, things of that nature, if you engage with their posts, if you actually develop a communication channel with them, then when you go and put out, man, I've been looking for a job and, I've applied and nobody said anything, those people will reach back out to you. If they have an opening, they'll reach back out. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there and actually engage with higher ups. If you see a post that you think, oh, I have some insight on that, comment on it. Let them know what your insight is. That way they can actually engage with you. And that way, if you don't feel ready for a job yet and you start looking at jobs 6 months down the road, you can actively post about those things like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Of applied to, I say don't name and shame companies right away. Give it a few years before that happens, just because it looks bad. But, if you haven't heard, and honestly, if it's a company you really want to work for, if you've already developed the communication channel with those hiring managers, you can reach out and say, hey, I have applied like 3 times and never heard back. Can you tell me why? But don't do it out in your first hi, I've applied and I've never heard back. Like, you should have a rapport. You should have a relationship with these people before. So, that would be the biggest thing. Is develop your relationships and don't get disheartened. Don't let failure hold you back. Pick yourself back up. Ask someone for a hand. There's many of us that'll help you get to where you want to be and help you grow. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Well, thanks. Great advice. So thanks for joining me. It was an honor to have you on. I think this can be useful to a lot of people, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, definitely. Anytime. As always, man, it's been great having you on my show, the times you've come on. It's great being on here. And like I said, anytime you need anything, you let me know. And for anybody listening, feel free to reach out. I'm always here to help and give advice, or, you don't have to take it, but I'll give you my perspective. And then it's up to you whether or not you want to listen. So.
Well, thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you on the next episode.
BugCrowd's award-winning platform combines actionable contextual intelligence with the skill and experience of the world's most elite hackers to help leading organizations identify and fix vulnerabilities, protect customers, and make the digitally connected world a safer place. Learn more at bugcrowd.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Hacker Factory podcast with Phillip Wylie. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.